welcome to this evening's episode of Conversational Elevation with the Viberarian. My name is Joelle, and I am your host, and I'm here every week on the Viberarian Collective Network. We are broadcasting through the Blog Talk Radio platform, and it is always a pleasure to connect with you over the airwaves and in real life as well. You can find me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram under @TheViberarian. Now that is TheViberarian. And the E in that stands for energy. My goal is to elevate, enlighten, and empower. And I'm starting that process with myself and invite you to join along with me in whatever way and to the degree that you see fit. Now, if you see something positive out there that you would like to pass on or amplify, please just tag Good Vibe Tribe or Get Lifted, and I will recirculate that energy and keep paying it forward, because we can all use something uplifting at any time of the day or night, and I am always delighted to be able to contribute to that amplification. Now, the phone line for this show is 646-787-8436, and you can call in and listen to the show, and if you have something that you would like to say to add to the conversation, definitely just press the #1 key, and that lets me know that you have something to say, and I'll bring you on the air as soon as possible. And so this evening, we are going to be talking about influence and the whole idea of being an influencer. As we know, this is a new world economy where we are connected with people in ways like never before. And so the idea of becoming an influencer is a way to earn your living and a way to become known and seen and everything is what we are experiencing as an economic way. So I'm getting a little feedback here that I am sounding a bit like I'm in a can. So, we're still working out all of the technology issues as we continue each week. And as you know, it is Mercury retrograde. So things that are technology-based can also be a little bit challenging for us to deal with. So we're going to see if we can balance this out a little bit. If the folks in the chat room can let me know if we've still got that echo sound. Let's see here. Testing. How's the sound now? Thank you for everybody who's in the chat. If you are on the Blog Talk page, you can join the chat by seeing at the bottom of the broadcast page. You can, put your comments and things there, and I will see them and bring them into our conversation as well. All right, so influence. Now, one of the things that brought this idea on for me about being an influencer is that I watched a documentary this week that was on HBO Max, and it is called Fakeness, and it was really an eye-opening experience to see. And as a person who participates in the idea that spreading energy around is a positive thing, the idea of being an influencer is really actually something that is positive on a level. But I guess it has its challenges and a dark side, and it can become problematic. As this documentary explored, the whole premise is that the idea of what do people want to be when they grow up. And at one point in time when we were asked about that, many of us said professions and careers, like I want to be a doctor, I want to be an athlete, I want to be a singer or a nurse or a librarian, like in my case, right? We think of these ideas of things that we do to earn income and what we want to become one day. But now, as the documentary talked about, there's this whole idea that, you know, we want to become famous in terms of being a social media icon or a social media personality. So this goal of getting followers and getting likes and getting seen by others is seen as the be-all, end-all, and that there's no other goal or further aspiration for a certain segment of society, certainly not for everybody, but, you know, the goal of being this influencer and having followers and having fans and likes and things of that matter is it's just very interesting. So a few years ago, there was a nephew that was like living with me for a period of time with myself and my partner at that time, and we were trying to get him in school and get him stabilized and to kind of help him shift his life. And at that point in time, I guess it was probably 10 years ago, and he was heavily into Twitter. And so at one point, from the time in the space of maybe 3 months or 4 months, he had done 17,000 tweets. That number was mind-boggling to me. First of all, because I could see his Twitter feed, and he wasn't talking about anything at all. He was just retweeting things or saying one clever word or a rap lyric or something like that, but he would be fixated on his phone waiting to see if somebody liked or retweeted him, and he took 17,000 repetitive actions in order to generate the feeling that he got from when somebody interacted with him and liked what he did. Now, mind you, there was never any other conversation with these folks. They were just as brief as he was, except they would say, what's up, or hey, or cool, or something like that. But even that little bit of energy that he would get from that was so enticing to him that he, in 90 days, did 17,000 of those things in order to get that juice, I guess you would call it, right? There's a factor of a chemical release or endorphin that the people who created these social networking systems and ways of doing and commenting, that whole transaction of feel-good reward and validation is something that the engineers understood better than we as users did as these systems were beginning to be developed. So here he is on that juice looking for the ever-elusive validation that he was getting by someone having seen him say absolutely nothing. Right? So it was very interesting because he was not alone. Of course, he was out there in this whole series, a group of people that were doing the same thing that he was doing. And he would get put in like a jail, I guess they call it, when these systems put you in timeout and say that you are behaving in a way that does not meet the terms of service. And he would be really depressed to be in lockdown from this activity, and it was like he would be waiting for that time to come off so that he could get back into getting this dynamic of tweet, response. Now, this is in the era before Instagram and way before the era of TikTok, and we have seen these systems evolve in ways that continue to draw people in. And, in this particular documentary, they were talking about the sheer amount of money that is paid by brands in order to have, quote unquote, influencers market or speak about or wear or elsewise incorporate their particular product to get it in front of people. It was insane the amount of money that you could see being paid. I think one person said they paid $80,000 for two tweets and an Instagram. Like it was something that was so small that you would think the value of many people's two-income family household income for one activity on a social network is really, really mind-boggling. Now, in terms of equalizing access to money that is out there, these social economies of becoming an influence many people into an opportunity of generating income that never, ever, ever would have existed for them to earn in the old way of doing things. Unless you had celebrity status and were already a person of note, I'm thinking about Matthew McConaughey driving his car, and Samuel Jackson talking about which vehicle color you're going to pick. They use their star power in order to get behind brands, but these days anybody can leverage a certain star power in order to get an endorsement that changes their life and begins to earn them significant income, changing their life for the better almost instantly in terms of economics. It's very interesting to me because as the Viberarian, one of the things that I have been doing is sharing the experiences that I have in terms of places where I go, services that I use, things that I recommend to others because they were positive for me. That is part of the whole premise of spreading good vibes in my whole business plan, is to pass along these, through my experience, then the positivity. So in many ways, I am no different from any of the influencers who you would see are selling cosmetics or products and things like that. I am not influential enough that I receive invitations to go to resorts or to go on vacations or to test products. And I'm actually okay with that because that was not my intention in spreading the knowledge of my experience to others. My intention was to say, this really made my life better, or in some cases, if it didn't make my life better, then to share that honestly. But really the goal is to showcase and put forward high vibe people, products, places, and things for other people to experience as well. It's kind of like in the library, when the librarian recommends a good book. The librarian is not paid to recommend that book. She is just using her knowledge and experience in order to say, this is a good read, right? I think you would like it, understanding who you are and what your goal is. Let me recommend this for you. But behind that recommendation, of course, there was a whole marketing machine that the librarian never sees, that the publishers engage in terms of getting that best-selling book together and getting it out there and getting it to the libraries, right? So there's a whole lot of politics and positioning that happens before the point when an everyday person gets to utilize something and then tell somebody else about it. And in a lot of ways, this social media economy of influence is doing that in a grand scale. People are trying yoga and then they become a spokesperson for that yoga and become a practitioner of the yoga, and through people following their journey intently and watching, then this behind the scenes kind of journey ends up in a place where then they receive a economic value and reward for that cosign, that thumbs up, that positive feedback. So it has me thinking about where is the point of compromise in terms of when something is positive versus when something is problematic. Right? So if we are under the influence of all these people who are out here daily posting and daily talking about your life, I personally follow some people who I am very much grown by what I read from them. When I look at the tidbits that they put out, or when they share their journey, like when I see a friend who has embarked on a health journey of transformation. I had a friend who did like a year personal health sabbatical that she shared and blogged about, and that influenced me to undertake the same kind of experience for myself not even a year later. So that is an example of a positive influence. Now, when she shared that post, she was not trying to earn money by sharing it. She was simply just blogging about it freely, spending her own time and energy. And the only way that she knew if she actually had influenced somebody is if they told her in response to one of the blog posts, hey, this was really insightful, or hey, this was very valuable. And I certainly called and let her know that I had been moved and shifted into approaching my life in a different way just by her having approached her life in a different way at that point as well. So, I mean, that's a cool experience of influence and going viral, if you will. It might have only been 5 or 6 people who she transformed, but that was passed along as easily as a common cold, right? That's a positive thing. Now, the earned reward for her then is the feeling of knowing that not only did she live her own life and did it transform her, she got to hear testimony and visibly then see what her change sparked in another person. That is the most beautiful type of influence or being influential that I think a person can experience. And so it's very interesting because many of us don't set out to be influential. We just go about living our lives in an honest and transparent way, right? I think that like Tabitha Brown is an example of someone who was just talking about her journey in eating vegan and the recipes that she developed and her way of talking to her users or her followers, if you will, was just very personable, and it touched people in a way that made them feel like they were bringing her as a friend into their kitchen and into their reality. And that energy that she possessed and the way that she had of being Tabitha translated into popularity beyond her planning, to where she became on TV, and then she was able to become a personality developed into a brand that is unique and continues to spread its reach in viral content and in positive ways of being authentic, of eating and treating your body in a certain way and feeding it well. I myself have been highly entertained and inspired by recipes that I have seen her preparing and cooking, right? And from her little, because that's your business, because that's my business, like that. These things have become common things within a circle of people that I'm connected to because of her influence on us. Again, positive passing along of energy. When we have the dark side of this transaction, this documentary talked about the fact that there are so many fake profiles, and there is an absolute. Hi, this is Joelle, and we are back. This is Conversational Elevation with the Viberarian, and unfortunately, we have some technical difficulties with the last feed. It just kind of stopped in the middle, so we're going to have to splice this together so that we can have the continuity of conversation on the replay. So, we were talking about influence and the currency and the exchange and the value of our energy that we put into things, and why that is important to brands and companies and folks who want to pay us for that time. So, we were talking about the positive power of once people begin to hear you on your platform and begin to pay attention to what you're saying, that 9 times out of 10 that it is, very positive. But discovering the dark underside, I won't even say it's dark, because it's just the reality of the current economy, is that there are fake profiles and bots that you can purchase to boost yourself, to put yourself out in front of people in a way that they would not take notice of you with these algorithms on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok until you start to reach certain numbers. So there are people who have created whole businesses off of fake reviews, fake interactions, fake likes, and they're saying that, for some of the largest people who have the most amount of followers, that it is known that over half of the followers are fake bots, right? And so there's no structure in place to clean this up. There's no desire to clean it up because there's still money changing hands. If Kim Kardashian is paid a grip of money in order to talk to you about why she uses a particular product, then for the people for whom Kim Kardashian is a person of note, then they are going to follow her advice and take her recommendation at face value and then spend their money. And the reason that she receives the endorsements is because they know that a certain amount of people are going to buy something because she tells them that she's using it, and they want to be like her. So it's a different version of the same transaction that I talked about with my friend who went on sabbatical and changed her life and took a year off for herself to do self-care, who influenced me to do the same thing in my own way a year later. 2 different scenarios, but it's still the same premise. So, it's just interesting because I'm not necessarily one who will be influenced by a brand power to do something, but I will certainly be influenced by my peer group and even people who I don't personally know that I think are positive voices. I'm influenced to do things all the time by them, by a quote that they put out, by a meditation that they recommend, by a particular practice that they're speaking about, such as sound healing or, which crystals to use. I am influenced all the time. So what I'm influenced to do is firstly to pay attention to the ecosystems where these things are shared. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook to a lesser degree, but I'm on there and I'm scrolling, I'm being amused, I'm being entertained, I'm learning things. For every one thing that I learn, I'm passing 10 other pictures or posts that really are shiny and sparkly, but not necessarily adding to my overall positive quotient. And some of them I scroll pretty quickly by because I already know that they're not necessarily engaging to me. But I don't spend the time to then clean up who I follow. I just move more quickly through my feed. But the very act of me engaging in that time on Instagram, even to use and be aware of those things, time is what we have. So if I have spent an hour scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and in the period of that hour I've been uplifted like 50% of the time and then blah 50% of the time, then I look at the value of that time, and I'm always then saying, was this time well spent, or did I waste my currency, which is my energy? What is interesting is if you look at like the movie The Social Dilemma, you will find out that these programmers and engineers, they know when we pause scrolling. They know where our eyes have tracked on the screen in terms of a side ad or a post. And they have built profiles and understanding of us as behavioral analysis of profiles to know that by moving something from the left to the screen or to the right of the screen can actually compel us to do something differently, to pause for a few milliseconds. The marketers who are very successful understand that in order to capture your gaze of attention, motion needs to be started in a certain few milliseconds after your eye processes it, and that it will hook your brain into paying attention before you even become conscious of that. So to me, that is like a kind of like, whoa, part of the scenario, to know that the people who have made these systems know much more about me and my behavior than I do. And I consider myself to be a conscious and woke person, but I'm no behavioral scientist. I'm not a marketing scientist. I'm a librarian, so I understand how people search for information and information-seeking behaviors. But, in a Google world where Google puts search engine results in the place that they have decided that they be ranked rather than by actual relevancy to the content that helps the person, then it is a false paradigm of what our information reality really is. If you are out there interacting in a world where half the people are fake, they're not even real people, where half the reason that you're seeing something is because there has been a push of fakeness in order to put them out in front of you, would you have really ever seen them had it not been for that boost and for the dollars paid for that boost so that you did? One of the challenges as a small business person in terms of marketing myself or services and the people that I work with and bringing them out into others is that the playing field is not level when it comes to being able to devote your resources to the same spend that like the big brands do. But what I have adopted even before beginning to participate in these systems is that I am not going to, I guess it's like look all the way into the light. Like I'm aware of the systems and I understand somewhat how they work, but my influence is not dependent on my using these systems. I believe that my influence and my ability to affect people in a positive way begins inside from my very frequency. And that even when I walk through like a grocery store or outdoors in the world, that my frequency is more influential than any amount of money that I could have spent on a Facebook ad campaign or to boost an Instagram post. So my first tier of reliance is just to be my most authentic self and to vibrate at the highest frequency possible at any given time. And I trust and I allow and I understand and know that there are people who I have influenced that I will never, ever know about. That it will be the person who passed by me walking in the opposite direction, that after they walked by, they just felt happier inside. And they didn't know why, because it was happening with them at a cellular level, so that they were transmitted my frequency and were never the actual wiser. So, one of the beautiful lights that I love being connected to is Carolyn Munden. And she's on Instagram as well, and she posts a lot of stuff about, like, currently she's posting about what books she's reading and quotes that inspire her. And, she posted things for her business and for her services. And, of course, I have engaged her in terms of doing coaching with her at different times not because of the marketing material that she sent me, but because I came to know her and see how she was living her life, not just in social media, but through personal interactions. And because I saw the level of peace that she was just exhibiting through my observational lens, I said, well, I could learn something from her. So I went to a series of weekly coaching for a period of time, and it was beautiful. But one of the things she said at one point is that her guy's been talking about, getting messages out, if there is such a thing. She said, did Jesus have a social media manager? Did Jesus tweet? Did he post dope Instagram quotes? No. Yet and still here we are, 2021 years after, the person we think of as Jesus in the most common sense. I'm not here to debate all that, but, we think of him and hear his influence of what would Jesus do? Would you be Christ-like in your response to your fellow man? Is here, and they weren't even like audio recording his preaching, and there was no map of where his stops were going to be on his book tour as he was traveling around Canaan and Galilee, right? And yet here is the message and the energy of being unconditional love to your fellow man and your fellow mankind is that, we are able to become like him in a way. And here we are 2,000 years later, still with people who are endeavoring to embody his message as we have come to understand it. And of course, there are those who say, what we have is the propaganda version, when the marketing managers got together and they decided to, create the stories of his life, then of course it's through third person experiences of Jesus, right? So much of what we are seeing in our social lives and in our Facebook feeds is the public face, the official version of ourselves. And many people, if you were to find out that they are deeply unhappy personally, even though all you would see is that they are happy and in marital bliss and their kids are all well behaved and they're doing well on their job, but as soon as that post goes away, then you find out that, if you really touch them on the inside, that they are not so happy and they're miserable or they're in a mental health crisis, and we would never know because we're looking through the prism of the social lens. that everybody wants to put their spin on it, right? One of the most significant things to me that I continually remember, and I'm sure that the social networks and sites want us to not recall this, is there is a whole big wide world happening that is never captured on social media. There are people living their best lives, enjoying their vacations, who don't even own a phone, don't Instagram, don't tweet, don't TikTok, none of that. And yet when they are on their vacation and having the time of their life and their dream experience that they have created for themselves, their energy is still influencing other people around them. I would like to think that actually the majority of the world is existing outside of the influencer reality. And that's the truth. But, they would have us to think that if you're not on Facebook and you're not on Instagram, then you are somehow going to be left out. I think that it's very key to think about the fact that not having a television to influence you or to tell lies to your vision, as they say in our popular, content. If we step out of what TV tries to influence in terms of what our reality looks like, if we step outside of what the media outlets, the newspapers, the TV channels tell us is the news, and realize that there is news happening in our friends and families' life on a daily basis. It's news when, a friend got a promotion at work and you never saw about it on Facebook. You never saw about it on Instagram, but it's still important news. It would never make it to Fox 5 Atlanta or CNN that this person, may have lost a loved one, right? But it's still news. And so being careful to not be shaped into this mold that says, if it ain't happening on social media, then it ain't really happening. Well, I just reject that as a premise. And I'm going to continue to live my life in that way that gives space, recognizing those places for what they are, but stepping out of them and keeping my perspective more balanced, that there is a whole large reality happening by people who I can observe and experience consciously, energetically, and that I also am experiencing without being consciously aware of it, just through proximity. It's very freeing to begin to look outside of that bubble, because it can put a lot of pressure on people. It can put a lot of pressure on business people who are like, well, I'm not really good at this, but now I have to do it, and I've got to find time to do it, and it just stresses me out, and I'm always making mistakes, and I don't have any followers, and I don't have any friends. And that's all on top of the fact that they're trying to do the service or the thing it is that is their actual business, and don't have time to do it because they're trying to do something that we've been told that we have to do. What is the currency exchange of your energy that is the cost of your social interactions? Now, if you are, trying out so many things that all of a sudden a brand says, hey, we want you to try this out, send it to us. We're to send it to you, and then all you got to do is talk about it, I mean, if I received an oracle card deck and wanted to use it, of course, then I'd be very thankful and grateful that I received it. However, my goal is not to make myself so popular that people do that. As I share the things that I do on my channels and on my YouTube and on my Instagram, I don't participate in the ad sharing program on YouTube, just because I don't necessarily want to insert ads in my content. And I believe that, spirit will align the people who need to hear me in spirit's way. And that spirit is way more powerful than the YouTube algorithm, right? So I believe that the people who I am meant to have as clients or to be connected to socially or as friends, I rely on the larger system of our energetic connection that exists outside of these technology-based infrastructures. Now, does that mean that I am living small or playing it small? Quite possibly. But I have also watched people who have played the game and who have grown their channels to the place where they are earning revenue to the tunes of thousands of dollars a month. I know for people who play video games, the whole Twitch system of being able to attract people to watching you play video games to the point where you are making thousands of dollars per month, just because people enjoy watching you do what you do. What do we lose in doing our own thing while we are paused looking at others do their thing? It's kind of like the magician trick when you look to see what shell is the ball underneath, right? Where'd it go? Follow the ball, right? And things change hands and it's pushed over to the other. So if we are caught up in this ecosystem where we spend hours playing at it or being attention focused to it, that is our energy. And time can be money. Time can be your freedom. Time can be what you contribute to your work. And if you're spending time seeing what you want to purchase, what you want to see, what you want to consume, not only have you devoted the time to the research or the activity of being shown it, but then you're going to actually spend your money to purchase that thing. So now you've had a double toll: your money, which is your work, effort, energy, and then your attention time, which is also then time that you're not spending doing other things, such as taking care of yourself and talking with people and family and friends and being outdoors or reading a book or not contemplating what you want to spend. So it's a very, very kind of nuanced and delicate tightrope of living in the influence economy where everything around you is designed to capture your attention with the ultimate goal of your attention being converted to an intention, which is when then you decide you're going to go buy or participate or do something that you've seen. And then the energy that you actually then incur in the manifested realm of bringing that thing to yourself. So it's 3 levels of things that have just siphoned off bits of you. Now, it's all positive when you feel like that you are beginning to be validating people and that you're seen as having a voice of authority and people take your recommendations. Like we always love to tell somebody where to go eat. When you're over here so-and-so, you need to check out such and such place. And then they go and they eat there and they come back and are like, oh, my God, it was the best barbecue ever, right? We went on the drive-ins and dives tour, on one of the cross-country drives. I took me and my bestie stopped at like 3 or 4 places, and we went from state to state based on where we had seen Guy Fieri stop, right? Luckily, on that trip, all the places we went to were good. Right, so Guy's recommendations were cool, but I went to other places that he recommended that were not that great. And other people were like, it really was not that great to me either. But because somebody famous said it was great and you should try it, then all of us went driving around our TV food maps to go try it. And I've been very disappointed and defensive even at times until I checked myself when somebody has come back and said, that wasn't good. I don't know why you thought that food there was good. That food was terrible. And then I found myself being like defensive, like, well, what did you order? Well, it must have been an off day. Like, so I've gotten involved in that transaction to a degree that may not be healthy because I got overly invested in my word, my energy being seen as not having the right mindset or the right palette or the right rating scale on that thing. And so I had to like learn to step back from that whole experience. Like, wait a second, I've been trapped up in a little matrix bubble. Right? I didn't cook the food in the back. It's not my recipe. You know, if they don't like it, then it's nothing personal, and my tastes are my own. Right? So there's a negative experience and backlash from the whole influence economy that's just as negative as, you know, my nephew sitting there waiting for somebody 17,000 times to just tell him that he was heard, that he mattered, even if it was only a retweet or a like. You know, I was just as vulnerable in that instance as he was in his youthfulness, right? So it wasn't just because he was young and silly, it's because he had gotten caught up in the system, as have I. So it's just so much to talk about with this whole idea of energy exchange, which is all influence is. It's recognizing that we are constantly out there putting out output. We are putting out our energy, our effort, and attention into things, and then we are sharing with others what we normally would have just kept to ourselves, but we now have a place where we can go share what it is we're interested in and what has our attention, what we like, what we want to do, what we're experiencing. We have a way of constantly broadcasting that now if we choose to. And then we receive a constant feedback loop of, ooh, like, oh, that was cool, hearts, views, comments, shares, right? We get that constant validation. And what happens then when we don't? You have to engage in these systems in a way that is aware and that is holistic. So being awakened to the fact that there is this economy where your energy is desired. It is desired by places that want your energy to be converted to the hours and minutes that you spend, and then the money that you take out of your pocket to further bring energy towards yourself. And what you always want to make sure is that there is not an imbalance in the output versus the input. So anytime that your attention is focused more on other people's experiences of things, if you're spending 6 hours scrolling through your Facebook feed rather than 6 hours actually going and doing something, then your output has been greater than what you receive by it. Now, if you are experiencing in that whole 6 hours nothing but positivity, and that is your way of reaching the world because you're in isolation and quarantine and all of that, and that little connection to the world is what keeps you feeling sane and happy and that you have community and family, then you've already assessed that the value return on your energetic investment is worthwhile. That is absolutely true for you, but always know what is flowing out versus what is flowing in. And when it's too easy to keep scrolling, engaged in activities that ultimately are not actually bringing you that positive flow back, we've been taught to factor those things out and just continue scrolling even longer until we can get up to our quotient of energy 6 for the day. You know, it's just so interesting. I would invite you to watch both the Social Dilemma documentary and Fakeness, because the experiment that they did, I'm not going to, give away the big reveal, but it definitely makes you look at things differently. It's is one of the reasons why I like documentaries, because they are based on a not scripted reality. You know, they're based on showing something in its actual impact and truest form. And so for those of us who exist in a socially networked reality, I think it's very important to understand the true context and parameters of that reality matrix before you engage too much in it. Always look to see, are you under the influence of something external to yourself? And if you are finding your scale tipped too far to the external, that, you know, I have to be here, I have to get this, or I feel bad about my life because what I'm seeing in the social fractal makes everybody else's lives look so good, right? Then your scale has tipped to a place where being under the influence is not healthy for you. And if you get to a point where you're over it, you're like, I'm over it. I don't need to see certain things. They no longer have effect on me. They no longer, have the glamour effect on me to where I'm like, oh, I got to have it. I got to do it. I got to go. Well, then you're over it. And that's a good place to be as well. But if it begins to make you feel bad and you're like, I'm over the fact that I have lack and that I'm not doing this and all that, I don't want to change my life because you're not keeping up with the Joneses, then examine that indicator as well. One of the things that I was mentioning about, being in the ecosystem, even as a YouTuber, where you're getting paid advertisement and you've been able to earn money to a point where you can leave your day job and begin to be existing solely as a Twitcher or YouTuber or influencer. Well, I've seen people whose YouTube monetization cuts off because YouTube says that they're going to cut it off, and YouTube reserves the right to do that. And I've seen people in crisis saying, oh my gosh, my whole family was dependent on this and there's nothing we can do now. And please, people help us, our people who've supported us to this level over a period of years that we took to invest our time and effort into building this. And now it's harder for them to build it back because the game has gotten more difficult, and that impacts people's lives in a very real way. I saw a young lady who was ready to, go to YouTube headquarters because it was like $4,000 for her that was basically said that she no longer earned, and she had already planned and accounted and put in the effort and the hours doing readings and those kind of things. To the degree that it was in her budget. And so when that arbitrary to her decision was made to not pay her that dividend, she got out of balance very quickly. But when you agree to experience the economic benefit of being an influencer, what happens when you are no longer the person to follow, when you're no longer the it person, when you're no longer the trendy person, when something evolves and the next new hotness is out, what happens if you have not figured out the formula for that new thing? It can make you out of balance, despondent. It can be disastrous for you financially. And the toll of the energy that you need to keep putting in to feed the system in order to continue being in front of people and capturing their attention when we know people are fickle, it can take its toll. And I've seen people trying to do daily activities and updates. And, there's that saying, you got to spend money to make money. Well, you got to spend time in these systems in order to get money out of these systems if that is the economy that you have decided to follow. Always look at the toll and the rate of energy exchange that is asked of you and that you volunteer into. Look at it to be aware and look at the larger picture beyond just the activity. You are a wealth of energy. You are a wealth. You are valuable. You are an asset. What you spend your attention and energy on is, first of all, important to you. And second of all, it is important to those others that you contribute your awareness to focus on them. Make sure that you are getting the proper return on your investment and that you are not going to be affected by a crash in your energetic market, if you will, and make sure that there is a long-term return on all that you invest with all that you are. So I thank you for joining me this evening. Through the technical difficulties, we're going to patch this episode together and get it out there. And if you have anything you would like to say about influence, please pop over. Of course, send me an email or pop over to the Facebook page and leave a comment in the episode notes. And if you're seeing this out in one of the podcast directories, then I hope that it finds you. I know that it finds you in the right and divine time. I'll be back next week at 8 p.m. on Thursday for more Conversational Elevation. And we will continue our experience of elevating ourselves and empowering ourselves to be the best versions of ourselves out in this world and to be a positive influence just by being us. So know that the light in me absolutely honors the light in you. Namaste.